UDL, designed with everyone in mind. As educators, we have many different students that come through our classroom doors each and every year. Students have many different needs, learning styles, intelligences, learning profiles, and a vast array of interests. One size does not fit all, no matter how hard you try to stretch it. That is why we have the Universal Design for Learning. Universal Design for Learning, or otherwise referred to as UDL, provides learning opportunities for all types of learners, not just some. UDL is defined as an educational framework that guides the development of flexible learning environments that can accommodate individual learning differences. UDL was inspired by the Universal Design movement in architecture and product development. During this movement, buildings, homes, products, and so on were built or represented to accommodate the widest array of users possible. Today you can see the effects of the UD movement all around us in aspects of building designs like the choice of taking an elevator, the stairs, an escalator, or a ramp to get to your desired destination. You can also see it in other areas such as signs that include multiple reading options, closed captioning on television, and accessibility options available on vehicles. Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, takes its premise from this movement. It basically states that curriculum should be able to accommodate all types of learners from the start. There are three essential features that define the UDL strategy. They include multiple means of representation, multiple means of expression, and multiple means of engagement. The following video will give insight into each of these areas.
Universal Design for Learning is primarily about learning, and we talk about three broad principles which are foundational to make sure learning happens. The first has to do with how we present information to the learner, and we talk about multiple means of representation. The second principle is about how do we ask learners to express what they know. The third principle has to do with the most important thing, which is how do we motivate and engage students in learning. Within multiple representations, how do we present information so we're sure every child can turn it into usable knowledge? There are three guidelines. The first is making sure that every child can perceive it. The second is making sure that every child can understand the way it's represented, what kind of language and symbols and so on. And the third is making sure that the information is comprehensible, that a child can process this information, put it together with background knowledge, and organize it and be able to turn it into usable knowledge. Within the principle of multiple means of action and expression, there are three guidelines. The first, provide options for physical expression, making sure that every learner has a way to physically act. And learners will differ greatly from students who may not be able to physically do something to students who have incredibly good motor control. The second guideline has to do with providing options for expression and fluency, the ways that the learner represents in symbols, in writing, in drawing, skillfully what it is they know. And individual learners vary differently. Some are very fluent as writers and very disfluent as a speaker in front of an audience. And the third guideline, provide options for executive functions. Individual learners differ greatly in how good they are at setting a goal for themselves, organizing the information that they are going to express, planning their acts, and monitoring their progress, what executives do in a company. And we need to provide options so that even students who are not yet very good at executive functions can express what they know through their writing, through their speaking, through their drawing. The third principle is multiple means of engagement. And in many ways, it's the most important principle. Learners differ very dramatically in what does engage them. And the guidelines are helpful in providing options for how do we make sure that we're going to engage, sustain, and help students learn how to regulate their own behavior. So there are 3 guidelines. The first is providing options for recruiting interest. The very thing that will attract some students' interest, a novel, exciting event, can be threatening and distracting to another student. Students who have attentional difficulties can be quite different in how their engagement works. So we need multiple ways, options to recruit interest. It won't be the same for everybody. A second guideline within the engagement principle is to provide options for sustaining effort and persistence. Once a student's interest has been recruited, that's an important startup. But the hard part often is to sustain the effort and persistence that real learning, deep, transformative learning requires. And many classrooms are set up poorly for some students to sustain that effort and persistence. So the second guideline is about what are the options we can build into a learning environment that would help students who have difficulty in sustaining those. The third guideline is in many ways the most difficult to understand, and that is we don't want students who are merely attracted to what we propose or can sustain their effort on things that we want them to do. We want students who are internally driven, who can what we call self-regulate, who begin to set goals for themselves, to be able to determine what's important for them so that they'll be lifelong learners. So we talk in the third guideline in this area as provide options for self-regulation, for developing self-regulation. And that means how do we build into the learning environment supports and challenges that help students move away from being dominated by the environment, things that attract their attention, to being dominated by their goals, by their plans, by what they want to achieve. Within each of the guidelines, there's more concrete checkpoints to guide a teacher or curriculum designer in what actually to do. A checkpoint might be make sure you include captions, make sure you include a description for an image. Universal Design for Learning guidelines are about how do we make sure there's enough options, flexibility, alternatives built into the curriculum so that there's challenges aplenty for the most gifted and talented student, and there's enough options and challenges and supports for the most struggling student built into the curriculum from day one so that everybody is achieving at their optimum.